British immigrants to Savannah and in Frederica, learning multiple languages, working with the Jews, working with the Italians, the Germans, giving communion frequently during the week, which was a new innovation in Savannah. And John's work among this virgin population, as you can see here in a very early layout of the city of Savannah, there were not many settlements. There was not a Episcopal church yet. Wesley was given a parsonage on the outskirts of town. There was a lot for Christ Church Episcopal, which was already laid aside, but Wesley had to preach at the courthouse and the customs house and in numerous house locations throughout the city. Today, Savannah is marked with many sites where Wesley preached and ministered. His home location is marked. Christ Church Episcopal, where he was the third rector, grew into a very powerful Episcopal church there at the corner of Johnson Square. His preaching is marked, and in many ways you can find, if you look in our Google Earth material, John's presence is marked among the Episcopalians as much as the Methodist congregations. Here you have Johnson Square, Christ Church, which is the parish he was sent to serve in Savannah. They mark his time among them as a very high water mark of the parish, which has been a congregation there since 1733, although they didn't have the building from there. You see there are two great rectors or priests. John, the third rector, served for 2 years, and divine services were held in the courthouse building there, which is still standing and is the oldest building in Georgia. And then John was followed by his old Oxford Club, Holy Club, Methodist colleague, George Whitefield. So Christ Church Episcopal in Savannah, as well as other sites, are marked. Here at Reynolds Square, you have John Wesley's statue, which is the cover of my historical atlas of the Methodist movement, which was chosen by Abingdon in kind of a serendipitous way. If you're ever traveling, take a look at the Google Earth material here, and you will have some interesting sites which are clearly marked for your convenience in the Google Earth to lead you into Wesley, Savannah, which is kind of interesting. Look at this. The Yamacraw village, just a few blocks away, marks the work that John Wesley did among the Yamacraw, which frustrated him. So those are some of the structural things that Wesley was involved in Savannah. Structurally enduring was his encounter with the Moravian brethren, and their work in small groups. And mission disappointments with the Native Americans led to Wesley working closer with one man, August Spangenberg, the Reverend of the Moravian Brethren. And in the small groups, John was provoked by a question by Reverend Spangenberg. John, and I'm translating here, John, you don't seem so happy. Your Christianity seems very, very narrow and legalistic. Have you the happy knowledge or assurance that Christ is your Savior? And Wesley could not answer he said, I know that Christ is the Savior of the world, but then Spangenberg says, but is he your Savior? And he couldn't answer that. The need for joy and assurance of salvation, again, brought to Wesley's attention. And he couldn't answer the question, does the Spirit bear witness with your spirit that you're a child of God? This question would later on become embedded in the small classes that Wesley would continue to meet and to oversee back in Britain during the Wesleyan revival. So Spangenberg's work left a deep impression and a structure for ministry that was transferable for Wesley. But the Indian mission, its failure, John's attempt to bring an interior mission to the larger Creek nation was thwarted by Oglethorpe, and depression sets in for Wesley, and that's what it says here, the Indian mission to the interior doesn't go forward. Charles sees that his work as secretary to Oglethorpe is really about managing the Native Americans into submission. Wesley has been prioritized by Oglethorpe to simply maintain stability, and maintaining stability was never Wesley's sensibility. The notion of just serving to create a stable order for the Anglican Church and the Crown through its colony was not something attractive. Charles leaves in 1736, John in late 1737, but not before his vulnerability and depression leads to some missteps in love with a young female he was tutoring in language, Sophia Hopke. Sophia Hopke saw the vulnerability and perhaps the desperation in John's life, mistook that for his own affection for her. He probably had an affection that went beyond the nominal. She felt that he had proposed. He backed off. She quickly became engaged to another man and was married. This disappointed and hurt John deeply, and in a petulant way broke off offering communion to her, which was a legal issue in a crown colony where the church and state were mutually reinforcing. Would have not been a problem had Sophia's uncle not been the chief judge magistrate. This offended his sensibilities. The judge sent out a warrant for Wesley. Wesley did not capitulate to giving communion to Sophia and her new husband, and John slips over into Charleston and leaves under the cover of night. His period of ministry in Savannah and in Georgia among both the natives and the congregations there falling well short. He wrote in his diary, I went to America to be converted and to convert the Indians, but who, oh who will convert me? I leave having preached not as I ought, but as I was able. And of course many of us leave appointments, both missionary and congregational, with the same lament, we've left preached not as we ought, but as we were able. And so John and Charles return, put their tails between their legs, from the second rise of America and American Methodism from 1735 to 1737. That search for certainty is now plagued by the question of Spangenberg, do you know Christ as your assured and joyful Savior? And does the Spirit bear witness to your spirit that you're a child of God, apart from your works? This question would guide the third rise of Methodism, which we will look at in the next segment.